The initial threat to remove black historical figures such as Mary Seacole and Olaudah Equiano came about at the end of 2012. Michael Gove, the Secretary of State for Education, stated that students should be taught about what he described as more traditional figures, such as Oliver Cromwell and Winston Churchill. But I have to ask, more traditional for who? Certainly not more traditional for me. Essentially, what he was talking about was having more white men replacing black and female figures, when I think at this time what he should have been concentrating on is the lack of black history still in our school curriculum and increasing the amount of black history that was taught. Mary Seacole, who has been voted the #1 Black Briton, was one of those he stated should go. Mary's story is extraordinary not just because she put herself at risk in order to give to others, but because of the journey she embarked on at a time when women and black people faced far more barriers than they do now, and I'm not saying we don't face those barriers today as well, and because of how she overcame those barriers, ending with thousands of British people coming out to celebrate her on her return to Britain from the Crimea. In response to this attack, a small group of activists, both community and trade union activists, together with members of the Mary Seacole Statue Appeal and OBV and Simon Woolley, who's here today and should be congratulated actually on the role he played in coordinating the whole campaign. We initiated a campaign at the very start of the new year, so it was no like, it's the beginning of the new year, let's just sort of carry on winding down over after Christmas. It was straight into this campaign. And we set up a petition on change.org, which within weeks was signed by nearly 40,000 people. For anyone who doubts the impact of a petition, this one followed the petition I set up in the summer of 2012, which within 2.5 days led to a U-turn by the Olympic Committee, who had previously denied media accreditation to Britain's biggest black newspaper, The Voice. In both petitions we succeeded, and whilst petitions don't work for every kind of campaign, I think it's a lesson that actually they can have a huge impact, and it's a way of mobilising a huge amount of people. Our campaign was quickly became national news, definitely weekly and sometimes on a daily basis we were in the national news. An open letter, which was headed by Reverend Jesse Jackson, was signed by over 40 celebrities and trade union and community leaders and was published in the Times, and an early day motion was signed by 70 MPs. So in the space of a couple of months, several weeks, Gove did a U-turn, and we received a letter from him which said that he believed Mary Seacole and Olaudah Equiano should be on the national curriculum. They were fantastic role models, and more of such individuals were needed rather than less. You could have told him that at the beginning of the campaign. But effectively, he agreed with what we had to say. What won this campaign was people power, and it was asserting our collective power through quite easy and accessible means, internet, email, social networking, to mobilise huge numbers of people in a relatively short space of time. And every single person who signed that petition, if you're here today, thank you, you should be congratulated. However, there are still concerns about the national curriculum and black history. In the government consultation, we identified some issues. Black individuals and cultures are not to be taught before the age of 11. The consultation talked about an island story, disregarding the many cultures, religions and ethnicities that have formed this island story. World history is only to be taught in the context of how it relates to British history, and what is to be taught of black history is restricted to enslavement of African peoples, colonialism and the civil rights movement, just completely disregarding and ignoring the black achievements, civilisations and histories that existed prior to these events. So OBV, together with the Runnymede Trust and individuals, including myself, endorsed and coordinated a response to the consultation, raising all of these concerns, which has been shared with those who supported our campaign and wider networks, encouraging responses to the consultation. The consultation ended recently, so it's still important to keep our eyes and our voices heard on the proposals and keep on top of what's happening and continue that campaign. So I was also asked to talk, as well as the Mary Seacole campaign, about why the teaching of black history is important. So I'm going to go on to say something about that. When I leave the conference today, I'm going to speak at a unity rally against the EDL and the BNP. who will be holding demonstrations, not just in London, but across the UK, attempting to use the murder of Lee Rigby as a reason for spreading their hatred of racism and Islamophobia. Over the past week, we've seen Muslim communities, in particular, demonised and attacks on Muslim women, businesses and mosques. Racists and fascists are attempting to raise a new generation of racists, which if you see those protests and demonstrations, they've got young children with them, so they're feeding this hatred into the next generation of young people, their children. So black role models and historical figures are essential for black children, for self-esteem, for confidence, so that they see people who look like them acknowledged and celebrated, and they can be inspired by these great achievements going forward in education and careers. But it's also crucial that white children learn that history too, and important for all children to learn about the great achievements of a diverse range of people, those who look like them and those that don't, so they do not grow up with a limited and narrow understanding of what went before. It breaks down barriers, it dispels myths, lies and stereotypes, and can prevent ignorance, disrespect and hatred from developing and festering. And if it's not coming through the schools of the children of these fascist activists, if you want to call them that, then where is it going to come from? If all they're being taught is hatred and negativity and racism by their parents, then actually the school becomes even more crucial to teach them an alternative. And I think it also helps promote multiculturalism and equality. So to end, it's said that it takes a village to raise a child, but I think that village needs to reflect the world of communities we live in, including our shared and our separate histories. Frederick Douglass said it's easier to build strong children than repair broken men. I believe if we're to learn from the mistakes of history, we must first know that history and not a distorted version of the truth. If we're to overcome barriers today, we must understand what barriers were broken down before and how. And if our children are to rise up, aim high, challenge racism and achieve, they need to be inspired. That's why Black history is needed, not just for the well-being of Black children, but for the education of all children. And that's why Black role models, achievers, freedom fighters, warriors, civilizations must be celebrated and shared, and importantly, taught. Thank you.